Hi, and welcome to another episode of Fun with Trains with your host, Burr Stewart. Today we're going to be taking two brand new Atlas RS-3's for a trip on the road. And as you can hear, we've already turned on the locomotives, turned on the headlight, and we're checking that the engine direction works. Now we're going to couple the two engines together, and then I'll show you how we can use my NCE throttle to create a consist where the two locomotives are controlled together. On the NCE controller, the first thing we do is hit Setup Consist, and then it asks us for the consist address. We just let it select whichever address it wants. We put in the address of the lead loco and hit the forward direction. We put in the address of the rear loco and hit the reverse direction. And it asks if we want any more locomotives. We say no, and it's done. Con 4082 is ready to go, and the left locomotive will be the lead because we're heading the train in the left-hand direction. These locomotives come equipped with a lock sound ESU5 decoder. I recorded the sound you're hearing directly on my iPhone camera, and the master volume setting in the locomotive I changed from the factory default down to a value of CV63 equals 30, which is considerably lower than what you may be used to, but I find it's plenty adequate for operating trains in the basement. That was a little late for the horn for the grade crossing, but we'll have to cut the engineer a little slack today. After a few switching moves, our engines are in command of their train and ready to head north from Bayside Yard through Delta Y and up towards the Burlington Yard in Burlington, Washington. This is the north end of Everett's Bayside Yard, and I gave you a cutaway view so you can enjoy the consist of this train while we start rolling through the tunnel, which approaches the Everett's Delta Y. Here our train is coming out of the tunnel, taking the north leg of Delta Y and approaching the Snohomish River Bridge. In the prototype, this bridge is about 4 spans long with a drawbridge, but we just have room for one bridge. You can hear that the engineer still needs training on when to blow the grade crossing to be more effective. I really like the headlights on these units. They're LED yellowish colored bulbs that look very, very realistic and are bright enough they show up in these shots and really make their presence felt on the train room. On the prototype railroad, This line from Everett north to Burlington is largely flat, but on my layout I've had to build about a 2% grade, so these locomotives are pulling the train nice and hard. From this angle, you can really see the benefit of weathering the side frames on these locomotives. It just took me 5 or 10 minutes with a couple of different colors of Pan Pastels. Our next major landmark is the Stillaguamish River bridge crossing. And I've given you two different shots of the train coming across that bridge. I'm constrained in the layout to not be able to have scenery under the bridge, but the effect is still terrific. The consist on this train is typical of what you might see in 1973 of a train moving north to Vancouver, British Columbia. Combination of empty box cars for lumber and chemical tank cars, empty flats, so forth. This next bridge is the Skagit River Bridge in Mount Vernon. And I made this out of two different length bridges, but the prototype span is actually 3 bridges long. And that nice little caboose is a custom painted Athearn caboose. Even though I didn't have room to model the water underneath the bridge, the trains look pretty cool going across this bridge. I can live with the compromise. Now we're pulling into the Burlington Yard in Burlington, Washington, and past the yard office. If you've never been to this yard, I highly recommend it. It's just the perfect size for a model railroad. It has about 5 tracks and a single track main, with track 1 being the siding that we've just occupied with our train. The mountain in the backdrop is Mount Baker, which is a 10,000-foot peak in the Cascade Range, which is not usually visible from trackside, but it is visible throughout the region, so I had to put it on the backdrop. As you can see, these locomotives run smoothly and sound great. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of setting all the adjustments you can make in these Rock Sound V5 decoders. They have something like 2,000 user adjustable settings, which is way more than I would need in a lifetime. Some of the settings I did make were to set the maximum speed to about 30 miles per hour and the mid-range speed to about 15 miles per hour. This may seem slow, but when you have a model railroad in the basement, the slower your trains move, the longer and larger the basement seems. Look, we have a special treat here. It's another RS-3 locomotive in Great Northern paint that's in command of a work train that's stationed in Burlington. I'm not sure why that stop was so abrupt, but it probably has to do with brake settings, and I'm still experimenting with how to get the best brake performance out of these lock sound units. Having arrived at our destination, our two engines are pulling off the head end, and we'll run around the train, pulling the caboose off, and then retiring for the day at the yard office. Well, these locomotives are having no trouble negotiating a number 6 crossover there. If I were a stickler for operations, I guess I would have stopped the locomotive so that the brakeman could get out and return those two turnouts to normal before climbing back in the engine. Sorry about that. You can see this switch that we're crossing is for the Anacortes branch, which was a very lively part of the railroad, serving 2 refineries. And we haul a lot of tank cars south from here at each operating session. On the lower deck there, below the locomotives, you can see one of the oil docks in Seattle that we ship the oil to from the Anacortes branch. And it can take us hours, if not days, to get those tank cars delivered down there. It's a lot of fun. There, I left time enough for the brakeman to climb back on the engine. Those limestone jennies are part of a fictitious limestone branch behind the yard office there, and the rock train comes down from Bellingham, picks those up, and then heads south to one of the cement plants in Seattle. Well, I hope you enjoyed this inaugural run of these two ALCO units as much as I have. We'll pull into the station and I'll let you listen to the shutdown sequence from these sound decoders. If you want to learn more about how I set up these ALCO RS-3's or more about the layout in general, please visit my blog at burlingtonnorthern.blogspot.com. And note that's Burlington with 2 R's, Burlington. And I'd be happy to have you there. Thanks.